Hey, I'm Olivia, and you're listening to Soarin Around WDW. We are back this week with Dad again, who is here to talk with us about Liberty Square. And this is one of his favorite areas in the Magic Kingdom, so it's perfect that he's here to join us again. So welcome back, Dad.
Thank you. It's good to be back. And yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about Liberty Square.
Okay, so we're going to start off with the Hall of Presidents as our first attraction to discuss. And this is one that I've definitely experienced a few times, but I think the last time that I was in this attraction, I want to say that it was like pre-Obama, like it was a while ago. But I haven't been back since. I know Regan has been a few times, but Dad, have you been on this in more recent presidential years or into this attraction?
Yeah, we've gone on it. I should say, gone on it. We went and watched it a few times, probably 5, 6 years ago,
Okay.
if I remember right. Yeah. We try to catch it every so often.
Okay, yeah, it'll be interesting now with this next election since it was Trump, another president back to Trump, how they'll do that with the rotation because they usually have, if nobody's been in this attraction, they have all of the, previous presidents as an animatronic, but usually the current president is kind of front and center. And it's changed a little bit over the years, which we'll talk about, but it'll be interesting. They usually name all the presidents, and obviously most presidents have gone if they do two rounds or whatever you want to call it, 4 year time periods, then they're back to back. So this will be like a unique situation. And I don't know, I'm not very good with history. Has that happened before where a
Yes,
president
yes, it happened one other time. The name of the president eludes me, but
Okay.
this is the second time it's ever happened like this, where they've skipped a term and then came back in the next term. So this is always the second time that's ever happened.
Okay. Okay. I wonder what they did with that president. I guess I've never paid attention. Like I've never thought about it before because I was a kid and didn't really think about things like that. But I'm curious how they'll do that. But basically, Hall of Presidents was an opening day attraction. So it was there October 1st, 1971. And when the Hall of Presidents opened in 1971, Richard Nixon was in office. On a 1958 map of Disneyland, there was this future land that was supposed to be branching off of Main Street, which never came to be, called Liberty Street. And that was obviously over in California. But then when they created Magic Kingdom, they decided to go ahead and make Liberty Square its own section of the park, and that is where Hall of Presidents lives. It's one of the smaller sections of the park as far as attractions, but it does have quite a few different, restaurants and things that I forgot, like, oh yeah, I forgot about that, and I forgot about that, and thinking about different shops. But it definitely is a really interesting and neat part of the park. Except for the occasional addition of a president, the original show is pretty much was unchanged from 1971 till 1993. But then I guess in 1993 they updated the movie part that they show, which kind of decided to focus more on slavery and its effects on the Constitution. And until that time in 1993, Lincoln's speech was almost identical to the California speech that he gives in the Mr. Lincoln show, which I've never seen. But now we'll rotate with the Walt Disney animatronic starting this summer. And it also will be rewritten, and it was also rewritten to coincide with the revised movie. Lincoln's speech was rewritten. Pete Ranaday was replacing Royal Dano as the voice of Lincoln, and then Maya Angelou, which was really interesting, was brought on board as a narrator of the show and read the president's roll call. But the biggest change at the time was the addition of a second speaking president to the show, where Bill Clinton recorded his own speech and his figure delivered it prior to Mr. Lincoln speaking. Then, when George Bush came into office, he also recorded a speech, and J.D. Hall was then the narrator. So they have made some more changes in more recent years. And I guess I also learned, with the exception of Obama, Trump, and Biden, all of the presidents were sculpted by Disney legend Blaine Gibson. But after that, they, kind of sent them off to different Imagineers to take over. And the clothing that each president wears is accurate to the time period when they lived. So the fabric types, the tailoring techniques, that's all correct for the decade for when they were in office. So that was really interesting. I guess some of the little details that, again, I never paid attention to because I was a little kid and always thought this was kind of boring. But I guess there's braces on FDR's legs, and then Bush has a Timex watch. They also have his first inauguration date inscribed on the back of it, which you wouldn't know, I guess, sitting in the audience. But then for Obama, Imagineers recreated his wedding ring, which is like the same as what his actually looks like. Washington's chair is another like very detailed thing. It's a copy of the same one that he used during the 1787 Constitutional Convention. So lots of really little things that I feel like as a kid, yeah, I wouldn't have noticed, but today would be interesting and made me want to go back in and watch the show. So what else did you have to add about this attraction, Dad?
Well, spinning off the Blaine Gibson thing, I thought that was interesting because he started as an animator with Disney in 1939.
Oh,
And then he worked his way into doing the sculpting when they started doing the Disney parks. Of course, starting with Disneyland, and he did a lot of sculpting. He did Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln. That's the show that's over there. That's just Abraham Lincoln.
okay,
And
at Disneyland. Uh-huh.
at Disneyland, and that was also brought to the World's Fair in New York in 1964, 65. Yeah, so Blaine Gibson and his team sculpted all the presidents except for Barack Obama, Donald Trump, and Joe Biden. They actually asked him to come out of retirement back in the like 2000s. I guess must have been right around 2000 to sculpt George W. Bush because he was already
Okay.
well retired. He was in his 80s. He passed away in 2015 at age 97. So he lived a long,
Wow.
long life. A couple other things about Blaine I thought that was interesting. He worked on the Enchanted Tiki Room. It's a small world. He did most of the heads of the Pirates of the Caribbean, the Haunted
Okay.
Mansion, and he helped with the Country Bear Jamboree also. And he was honored as a Disney legend in 1993. So I thought that was kind of cool.
That is really cool. Yeah, so he was responsible for a lot of like the facial figure people that you
Yes,
think of.
yes.
Wow, cool. Very cool. So yeah, this attraction, I think it's about 10 or 15 minutes long, and usually there's the pre-show where you kind of wait in the front and then you go into the actual seated attraction. It reminds me a lot of the American Adventure over in Epcot, but very, yeah, very cool. If you're into history, it's definitely right up your alley. If you have little kids, it's a good break from the air conditioning. But yeah, it's been there since opening day. And then the next attraction we're going to talk about is the Liberty Square Riverboat, which opened the day after opening day, which I thought was interesting. So it didn't open on opening day. It opened October 2nd, 1971, and it was the first boat to sail the rivers of America in the Magic Kingdom. It was called the Admiral Joe Fowler, named after Disneyland's construction supervisor. And in 1973, a second boat was debuted called the Richard F. Irvine, and that was named after a Disney executive who oversaw the planning of Walt Disney World. So both boats ran on the river until 1980, and the Richard F. Irvine was overhauled and received all new superstructure with aluminum, vinyl, and was renamed to the Liberty Belle. And the attraction itself was renamed to the Liberty Square Riverboat to make it easier to remember and to tie it in with obviously being in the Liberty Square. This is a steam-powered paddle wheeler that's guided by a submerged track. So there is a track that it follows on. Nobody's actually steering the ship, but we were as kids able to go up there. I don't know if they still do this, but as kids, we were able to go up and drive the ship, and we got a little certificate that said we drove the ship. We got to take our picture up there with the big wheel, and we took turns kind of steering the wheel, steering the boat, quote unquote. Obviously, like we said, it's on a track, but that was something really cool and unique, and another special thing that, again, I don't know if they still do today or not, but that was fun. The trip is about 17 minutes around the loop, and the maximum capacity surprised me that it's 450 people. So that seemed like a lot to me. And at Disneyland Paris, they do have something called the Rivers of the Far West at Hong Kong Disneyland. There is no Frontierland or Liberty Square, so the Imagineers merged the Rivers of America with a classic Adventureland Jungle Cruise attraction, so there's not really the same type of thing. But yeah, it was a day after opening day. And obviously, it is about to go away soon to make room for Cars Land, Villains Land. It is still open. Regan and I just did it in December, and it was nice to kind of do it for a last time. We wrote it, and there were a lot more people on it than I think usually are because it's about to close. So everybody's trying to kind of get their last ride on. They haven't announced a closure date for it yet. They're still working on permit stuff for everything that they're trying to do in Magic Kingdom, but it was interesting to ride it. But then part of me was like, okay, yeah, I'm okay with this going, especially because they still have it at Disneyland, which was obviously the original. But what else do you have to add about the Liberty Square Riverboat?
No, I fondly remember you two piloting the boat, climbing up the little
Yeah.
ladder and asking. I thought that was super cool because I know your mom and I were always trying to find those little things that a lot of people didn't know about, even riding in the front of the monorail back in the day, which they don't let
Yeah.
you do anymore. That's something we did. We got a little card saying we had a little license for the monorail. I think I still
Yep.
got one on one of
I still
my.
have mine.
Okay. So, and that they don't do that anymore. So it's kind of neat. We got a chance to do things like that. But no, I have fond memories of the riverboat. A lot of times it was a great place to go, but was really crowded. You could get on other attractions, maybe real quick or whatever. You go on the riverboat, get a Mickey bar, and just kind of check out, the scenery, the Indian village they'd have at the back, and you go past the haunted mansion, the barrel bridge, watching the kids jump up and down on the barrel bridge, on Tom
Yeah.
Sawyer's Island. Yeah, is it a must do every time you go? No, it's been some time since I've been on it, but I do think it's well done. It's a real steamship, which is cool. It does ride on a track, but it is a real steamship. So that alone's pretty cool. Real paddle wheel boat, and those are not around too much anymore. So pretty
Yeah.
impressive.
Yeah, I wonder what they'll do with the boat, like when it's gone. I'm sure they won't I'd be surprised if they destroyed it. I wonder where they're going to put it or how that will work or what they'll do because it's very similar to the boat that they use in Fantasmic at Hollywood Studios.
Yes,
And
yes.
obviously at Disneyland, they just use their version of, the Liberty Bell, their riverboat for the Fantasmic show because it's already there, it's already on the track, but I wonder what they'll do with this one. That'll be interesting. And when we got to drive the ship, was that something that they asked, like they saw us and asked, or you all asked about? Did you know about it before we did it, or how did you find out about like even being allowed to do that?
Yeah, that would have been probably, of course, this would be the early days of the internet, but I remember doing an internet search on things like that. And yeah, you basically just have to ask. And, your kids will go up there and look at them with your big eyes and go, "Can we ride?" And they're probably,
Hmm.
how are they going to say no to that? But yeah, they just said, just go up and ask. And not that every time that you could go just because you asked, but we asked and they said, yeah, you could come up here. We have a little license for you and everything. And yeah, so is this something we looked into and we asked and they let you do it. So that's pretty cool.
Cool. Yeah, it is very cool. I have to see if I have I think I do have the certificate for that. I know I have pictures. I was looking at pictures the other day of Regan and I up there doing it, but I don't know that I think I do have the certificate. I know I have the monorail card.
Yes, I
So I'll
got
have to
mine too.
look in my bag. And then the next attraction is obviously your favorite, many people's favorite. I feel like this has exploded in years past is the Haunted Mansion. This was another opening day attraction at Disney World on October 1st, 1971. And to talk about it, we definitely have to go back to Disneyland because there is so much to talk about with this attraction. I think you could do an entire episode just on Haunted Mansion, as I know many other podcasts have. But to keep it a little more brief-ish, Disneyland. So while this wasn't part of the original attraction when Disneyland opened in 1955, they actually had an Imagineer, Ken Anderson, who was responsible for making the story about the adventure with Harper Goff's idea. I guess Harper Goff had this idea of this haunted house or spooky house, and it was entitled like a grim grinning adventure. Plans were made in Disneyland to make a New Orleans themed area in the small transition between Frontierland and Adventureland. And then New Orleans Square was created on this souvenir map and was supposed to have a thieves market, a pirate wax museum, a haunted house walkthrough. And when he was assigned this project, Anderson studied New Orleans, looked at old plantations, came up with a drawing of this antebellum manor overgrown with weeds, trees, moss, bats, and boarded up doors and windows. And Raleigh Crump and Yale Gracie were the two Imagineers put in charge of the special effects. They recreated many of Ken Anderson's stories. And the attraction was previewed in this 1965 episode of Walt Disney's Wonderful World of Color, but the attraction itself didn't open until 1969. So that's crazy that it took so long to get up and running. I guess the 6 year delay that from the initial to the actual ride opening was because of Disney's involvement in the New York's World Fair from 1964 to 65. So that kind of put a halt on making the attraction. And then they had to do this attraction redesign after Walt's death in 1966. So he was not alive when the attraction finally opened in Disneyland. But Mark Davis and Claude Coates were two of the mansion's main designers. They were always arguing whether the ride should be scary or funny. And then in August 1969, August 12th, 1969, the Disneyland version of the attraction officially opened to guests. At the time of its release, the original Haunted Mansion was considered a disappointment, which was so interesting to read. Many of the Imagineers were upset how the attraction turned out, one being Ken Anderson, who had a big hand in most of it and was responsible for a lot of the early concepts. And another was Imagineer Mark Davis, who claimed that there were just too many cooks in the kitchen and they just kind of had too many people working on too many different things and didn't make it cohesive. Do you have anything else to add about the Disneyland or the kind of start of this attraction, Dad?
Yeah, I guess it was the house, the actual plantation house that you see that you've been in. I believe you've
Yeah.
been in the Haunted Mansion there.
Hmm.
That was built, like you said, years before, and it was just like empty. And it
Yeah,
was
that's
just sitting there. People are
crazy.
like, "What's going on here? Where's the haunted house? We know it's going to come, but it was like we're still looking for, more ghosts for the haunted house and everything, and making up all these stories." And I think a lot of it too had they did the World's Fair in New York, 64, 65. That's where we had the small world there. And great moments with Mr. Lincoln. There were a variety of different attractions that Walt Disney had sponsors for, and that's how we got a lot of these rides built by
Yeah.
these sponsors. That could be a whole, another episode just talking about the World's Fair and Disney. But yeah, so they finally, got it going. Of course, Disney passed away in December 15th. What was it, 66? And so
Hmm.
that and the pirate ride they were trying to get going to, and that opened up in 67. So there's a lot going on at Disney at that time, and I think it just took them time to get it right. They want to open something. It was, like you said, it was supposed to be a walk-through attraction, and that just didn't run the people through fast enough. They didn't get the numbers through fast enough. They have to get more guests through. So that's how they came up with the doom buggy idea and all that. So yeah, I got a chance to go on it in 1970, the year after it opened when I was 10, and yeah, it's always been one of my favorite attractions.
When we went to Disneyland, yeah, we did get to go on it. We got to go on the regular version because we weren't there at Halloween time. Regan has only been, I
Good.
believe, on the Nightmare Before Christmas version. I don't think he's been because both times he went, once was October, once was December. So I believe it's always been Nightmare Before Christmas, but I might be wrong about that. But I actually like their Haunted Mansion structure exteriorly better. I think it's really, really cool. I think it ties in with the theme super well. Obviously, ours I have a heart for because it's the one that we know, but I do really love the Disneyland version of the ride. At least all the exterior, the queue, everything is just really neat there. So then at Disney World, the Haunted Mansion was an opening day attraction. And the attraction was developed at the same time as the Disneyland version. So it was a very similar experience, but I guess Disney World actually had a slightly larger show building. So they had several different scenes, new scenes, additional scenes compared to Disneyland. And the Florida Haunted Mansion was given more of like a Dutch Gothic revival style based on more northeastern mansions since we're on the East Coast. I guess they got a lot of inspiration from houses or older mansions in Pennsylvania, River Valley, like New York area. And the mansion is surrounded instead by large oak trees with Spanish moss, red maples, and pines, which are all native to Florida. So they tried to kind of make it different, which I like. I'm glad it's not a carbon copy of the same exact thing and makes more sense for like an East Coast mansion. But at the Walt Disney World Resort, the Haunted Mansion was closed for refurbishment at one point for a few months. And changes of the attraction during the refurbishment, this was in 2007, included the addition of new audio for the ghost hosts And then also they added some red, blue, and gold wallpaper. The gargoyles in the stretching room whispered messages that say like stay together and have like childlike giggles, which I don't remember that. But then they also added the staircase scene, which replaced kind of a dark, empty area with the footsteps going up. And then the foyer music was a little bit lower key. The attic scene was completely redone. So instead of just a bunch of pop-ups, they now have different, pictures where people's heads disappear. And then they also have the, Axe Bride, where she now talks and then kind of says different phrases over and over. And her name is Constance. She's in a wedding gown and she repeats different phrases over and over. And every few times she kind of raises her hand and a hatchet appears. So made it a lot creepier in my mind. It already, as a kid, I don't know that I was truly scared of it. I remember the pop-ups like at the time were, whoa, like that freaked you out. But now it's like, ooh, I could have nightmares about Constance. But basically, she's a white mannequin in a wedding gown. And when the lights go off, there's this projection that illuminates her entire body, which kind of makes her look more ghost-like, kind of similar to Madame Leota in the seance room. They also included the floating version of Madame Leota with a new updated projection. And then the Sinister 11, which are the portraits with the following eyes, were replaced and they changed to portraits from Disneyland's portrait gallery. Seven of the Sinister 11 are now in the loading area of the ride, which I actually didn't know that. I didn't know that they moved those. I knew they were gone, but I didn't know they moved them to where you get on the ride. I'll have to pay more attention to that. So they made a lot of updates during that very brief closure. And then in October 2010, construction walls went up because they totally changed the queue area, which is now much better if you're waiting in a long line out there, which it's not often that they have the entire queue open, only on really, really busy days, obviously, but it has a little more interactive things for kids to do, which we love. And a new effect was added to the ride, which is a hand that points to the left on the back of the Doom buggies as the guests exit, which I did not notice that either. I don't think I've ever noticed that. On March 14th, 2011, that's when the queue opened. In April 2011, they changed the hitchhiking ghost section of the ride. The ghosts replace your head. It's not just them sitting with you. They kind of do funny little tricks and use the mirror effects in a different way. So this ride has had a huge overhaul in the last, few years. They've changed a lot of things, but I feel like all the updates were really cool. They also added the Hatbox Ghost, which I forgot to mention, which was a big Disneyland thing. And everybody, I guess, was asking, where's the Hatbox Ghost? And now they kind of put it where what we used to call the Donald Duck chair used to be, kind of near the Knight of Shining Armor. So talk about this version of the ride, Dad, at Disney World, obviously your favorite, and what you've noticed with changes over the years and stuff.
Yeah, some things that stood out right from the beginning when they were doing the 1969 Disneyland, like you mentioned, they made two sets of figures, two sets of props, two sets of all the set pieces because they knew they're going to be building this other haunted mansion in Orlando. So they had that all done, which I thought was pretty cool. And Paul Frees is the voice of the Ghost House. Now, some of you might know him. He's the voice of the Pillsbury Doughboy on the
Oh,
commercial.
interesting. I didn't know that.
He's a Meister Burger in Santa Claus is
Mm.
Coming to Town. If you hear that voice, you go, oh, that's the Ghost House.
Oh, wow. I don't think I've ever caught that. We watch that quite
Yeah.
often
Oh, yeah. And he's
every
Boris
year.
Badenoff and Rocky and Bullwinkle. He's the Boris Badenoff. And he does all kinds of voices all through the 50s, 60s, and 70s. He has that really cool voice. He could do a lot of different types of voices. As you mentioned, the exteriors, the Hudson River Valley area, modeled after homes that you mentioned. I thought that was really cool. And the ride vehicle is a Doom buggy, kind of a play on Dune, like the sand dune buggy. Those were really popular when I was growing up in the 60s. So they thought it was kind of funny to call them Doom buggies that you ride in.
Yeah.
The stretch room in Walt Disney World, the posters and the ceiling goes up, where Disneyland, you're actually in a real elevator and you're going down because it has to get you below the train tracks.
Oh, I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, so that's kind of cool. You talked about the Disney queue expansion. I thought that expansion was a real plus. I don't think that was something like, oh, I wish they wouldn't have done that. I thought that was really well done. The ballroom scene uses the Pepper's Ghost illusion, which I thought was really cool. And people can look that up. I won't go into all the details. It's an illusion that's been around for like 130 years that magicians used to use at the turn of the century. So that's
Yes.
the ballroom scene, I guess, is the big thing there. Yeah, of course, the hitchhiking ghosts are kind of the stars. Was it Phineas? Is it Phineas, Ezra, and Gus? I think. And the singing bus in the graveyard, the singing grim grinning ghosts. I know Olivia's seen that 100 times.
Yes.
Uh, that's a group called the Mellow Men, and the Mellow Men have the real deep bass voice is Thurl Ravenscroft, and he's also the voice of Kellogg's Tony the Tiger.
Oh, wow. So lots of double, like famous voice actors in this
Oh,
ride.
big time. You talked about Yale Gracie, and of course, he did a lot of the special effects. But yeah, that's just a couple of things I thought that were kind of cool that kind of stood out that I've learned over the years.
Well, that's Gracie. As soon as I heard that name, I was like, oh, so they used him like in the ride as Master Gracie. And then the movie was like all about Gracie. Like that was the whole name. So it's cool
Yes.
that they kind of sneak some of those people in there as part of the, character plot thing, which is really
Yep.
neat. But yeah, it's a really neat ride. I think if you have kids who are super scared of things, be cautious. But my kids who are like can be frightened of things, but they just think it's kind of silly and fun. We kind of make it like it's a silly fun thing, it's just a fun little ride, and that's kind of how it was for us as kids. And they like going on it. It's never like we have to force them in on it. We also warn them in the stretching room, it gets dark. So if you've never been on it before, spoiler alert, it does get dark and there's a loud scream. So there is something you want to consider if you have little kids, just kind of warn them or cover their ears. You'll hear a lot of crying children in that part if you don't give them a heads up. That's typically what happens is kids start crying in there. But then it's not really truly scary. I think they did a good job of it's spooky, but it is a little silly. There's some fun parts, it's a lot of different things. But I have seen both of the Haunted Mansion movies. That is something that you took us to. I remember going to the movie theater to see Haunted
Yes.
Mansion in the theaters with you. And the first movie with Eddie Murphy was obviously a lot more like hokey, silly. I still really like that version, but I thought it was really neat to get to go to the theater and see, like similar with Pirates of the Caribbean, these Disney rides that were rides first and then became movies. But then we also have watched the Owen Wilson version of Haunted Mansion, which came out a few years ago, which is definitely more truly scary. It's not horror, but it's creepy, thrillery, has a very different plot, actually was very much more involved in like New Orleans culture, even though both, I believe, were filmed in like Louisiana, New Orleans area, or a lot of the exterior shots were there. I think both movies, they're definitely not for kids. The Eddie Murphy movie is more family version than the newer version, but I do like both. I think they really do an interesting job of like tying in little fun things to the ride. I did think the first one had a lot more nods and like hints to the ride than the second one did. But have you seen both? Did you see the newer one, Dad, with Owen Wilson, or just
Yes, I've seen both. I thought you're right. I think the Owen Wilson one was probably a little better movie for
yeah.
adults, but I have it on DVD, so I can't say I didn't like it. The original one with Eddie Murphy,
Yeah.
we went to it, and there's a lot of nods all the way through to the Haunted Mansion itself, and we could pick out everything all the way through. I can still do that to this day, and I thought it was well done. It didn't take off, of course, like the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, but I thought it was still good. Yes, I do have fond memories of going with you guys, of taking both you and Regan, and we enjoyed it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then at Halloween time, it's always a really popular ride. That's definitely when the wait time for this attraction skyrockets. Usually it's like a 20, 30-minute wait. If it says 13 minutes, that means there's no wait. But if it's longer than 40 minutes, it's definitely one that you want to try to get a Lightning Lane multi-pass for because the line can get long. The interactive queue helps for sure, but it gets very popular around Halloween time, understandably, and like during the Halloween party. Um, so that's something that you definitely want to keep in mind. And then you got to do a behind the scenes tour. Did you get to go behind the scenes of this ride, or there was a part of a tour that you did that you got to go like back where the cast members go, or am I misremembering that?
I think you probably remember me seeing a party they were offering online back in the early 2000s. It was like $500 a person, which was a lot of money in 25 years
Yeah.
ago,
Yeah.
for like a 3 hour thing where you would have a lunch or something in the stretch room. The rides close. It's after the hours, and then they take you on this like ghostly tour of the haunted mansion. I wanted to go, but at the time,
That's a
scraping up
lot of
that
money.
money to do something like that with all the little kids at home and everything probably was not a good idea. So I never went, but they have had a few of those things over the years, but very, very rare. That's why I thought maybe be excited to go. So
Yeah, because I've heard they've even sometimes done, or I guess maybe that's just part of the tour, but like, yeah, walking through the actual attraction, not on a dune buggy or getting to like walk, not just ride or something like that. I don't know. I remember that was a big thing many years ago. And yeah, now it's like very rare that they actually have
right.
stuff like that.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything like that in a long time. And sometimes, I guess if the ride breaks down long enough, they might flip the lights on. I've seen that happen rarely, where people have to get out of the doom buggies and get everybody off, just evacuate everybody for whatever reason. But I think that's happened very, very rarely. And I don't even know. I've heard of stories like that. I don't think I've ever seen something like that on YouTube where someone's filmed it. That would probably ruin it for me. So I don't know if I'd want to see that or not. So
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
I know we've been the last few years, probably the last 5 years, it has been breaking down a lot more often or having to stop and not doesn't seem like it's just for wheelchairs, which they obviously have to kind of stop it and you pause for a minute. But when Regan and I did our challenge last year, as many of you who have listened to our initial challenge run episode, that's the ride that ruined us. We got stuck for 40 minutes total. We had two different breakdowns. We thought we were going to get evacuated off, but we didn't. So you can tell that they wait a long time before they evacuate. And that, yeah, that's a ride that I feel like one time during the Halloween party, we went and it was probably 45 minutes before the fireworks, and we got stuck for a good half an hour with the kids on the ride. And we were just kind of repeating the same attic scene. And then we go a little bit, then they'd stop again, we repeat. And we thought we were going to get evacuated. We almost missed the fireworks. We were freaking out. But luckily, it eventually went, we got off, but we have never been evacuated off that ride. That's one that, yeah, I feel like it'd be cool in theory, but like it might ruin some of the magic of the ride a little bit.
Oh, for
Um, so
sure.
so I don't know that I would super love that. And then Liberty Square is one of the areas that does not really have a character meet and greet. I guess occasionally Merida from Brave is out in the Liberty Square area and you can meet her. But there are some, cool photo opportunities outside of the Haunted Mansion for sure with the invisible horse-drawn carriage. And then also there's in the Liberty Square, they have kind of the hanging, I don't know what you call them, like the stocks. Is that what they're called? Where you put your head through
Yeah, the stocks where they
the
would
stock.
punish different people, back in the
Yeah.
day.
Yeah. And then some interesting, just like Liberty Tree thing that I read was about the middle of the pavement that kind of turns, there's like the exterior and then the interior is more of like a brownish color. And that was supposed to represent like sewage because they didn't have like sewers back in the day. Is that right?
Yes, and I think they're in the middle of the wall there. If you look and see a different, I don't know if it's, I guess it's a different color. It's like supposed to represent the Mississippi River.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. Maybe that's what I was thinking. Yeah, okay, the
I don't
Mississippi
think it
River.
was a sewage thing. I think that wouldn't be very Disney-like.
Yeah,
But
I don't know where I read that.
well,
But the
yeah,
Mississippi River.
yeah. But it's supposed to be like the Mississippi River. That's what that center part is. That kind of swerves. If you look down in the middle of that, I think it starts right the edge of Frontierland and kind of goes right through Liberty Square. Yeah, that's what it's supposed to represent. That's what the we were doing. I think the Keys to the Kingdom tour, and they told us that when we were walking through there. I never heard that before that either.
Okay, okay. And then something worth mentioning before we get into the restaurants, which have some of the best restaurants in the park, in my opinion, is Ye Old Christmas Shop is one of the shops that they
Yeah.
have. And this shop, if you've never been in it, it's like it's very small, but they compared to other shops, I guess, in Disney World, but they have really cool Christmas ornaments. They do some like personalization of ornaments. This is a really just neat area to kind of walk through and see what they have. It's open year round, but they definitely have more unique to the park like Christmas merchandise around Christmas time, but they always have really cool Christmas ornaments, different ride ornaments unique to the parks. They also have character ornaments in there that are really cool. They obviously are a little more expensive, but they do have some really, really neat stuff. And I know you can go there and get the Mickey bulb shape ornaments, and they will personalize it for you. It costs a little bit extra money now. I don't think it used to, but now it does if you want it to say like the Jones family or whatever in the year. They'll write it really nice, kind of like they do if you get a pin, you can get it personalized at guest services. That's another fun thing. But I remember fondly like going in that Christmas shop and getting to look at different stuff and picking out ornaments over the years. And I still have a few ornaments from that shop.
We had one that we picked out probably 15 years ago that we had the year on it, and they did it. The gal just basically gave it to the gal that was doing the writing, and she just does it freehand. It's pretty impressive. And at that time, it was free. There was no extra charge, as long as you didn't want a bunch of things written on it. But it was like the year or whatever, or something like Merry Christmas or whatever you wanted to put on it. But it's a
Yeah.
Mickey has a Mickey ear shaped ornament, and we've hung that on the tree this year, so we still have that around.
Yeah. Yeah. The hardest thing I think is getting it home without it breaking. So I
Yes,
feel like that's
yes,
part
for
of the
flying for
challenge.
sure. Yes.
Or if you have a stroller and you're throwing stuff in your stroller. So another thing that is also unique to this area, and you can only do a few other places in Disney World itself, are the portrait galleries. So they do those silhouette portraits right outside of the Yield Christmas Shop area. The only other places that you can do this in Disney are on Main Street, in Epcot, in the France Pavilion, and also now they do have a place you can do it in Disney Springs. But if you want one of those silhouette portraits, I know those are very popular. That's not something I think we ever did. Did we, Dad?
We did. I don't remember doing that. No, we watched them many times, but I think we didn't really want to sit there
Yeah.
for how long you had to sit there. And sometimes for kids to sit that long, I know Regan probably wouldn't have sat there that long. He'd want to go, on a ride or something. So I know we never did that when you were little.
Yeah, and then another unique thing that they have over in that area is the parasol cart where they have different parasols. You can get them individualized. I think I had one of these as a kid. I remember having one, and there are a couple of places throughout. I believe in Epcot as well. There's another place where you can get parasols. So that's another unique. They have Liberty Square seems to have a lot of unique souvenir type things in the area, which is nice. And then to get into the restaurants. So some of our favorite places to eat are here in Liberty Square. Our all-time favorite, or my all-time favorite restaurant is Liberty Tree Tavern, which is a sit-down family style all-you-can-eat meal. It's table service. It usually ranges from $35 to $60, kids and adult, for both lunch and dinner now. So this has changed over the years, which we'll talk about, but it used to be character dining. And they used to have Mickey, Minnie, Goofy, Pluto all dressed up in old, I don't know how to describe it, like Liberty style old school garb. And they had these cute little outfits. They'd come out and say hi, and this was only at dinner time. It used to be a fixed one plate lunch menu, and they had different options. So instead of it being just, turkey, mashed potatoes, which we love, green beans, they also had other options, and you could get that in just one plate, and it was much cheaper than the character dining option. And this was a place that we frequented. Do you still have Liberty Tree mugs at home, Dad, that were like souvenirs from there?
I do. I keep them in the freezer, so when I pour my A&W root beer in it, I get the whole A&W root beer effect. I actually looked at those the other day. Got two of them still sitting in the freezer. Yeah, I use them ever so often.
Yeah, so they used to sell as souvenirs. You could take the mugs home with you, and they would serve ice cold root beer in them. Did they do floats there too? I'm sure they probably did for an upcharge.
They probably did. I think was it Sleepy Hollow was the place where you
Yeah,
always got root beer float. That was kind of your
yeah.
thing there. But real quick with the character dining, I think Chip and Dale was. Well, I know Chip and
Oh, that's
Dale was
right.
there too,
Yes.
because I remember going with my wife Doreen there. I think we were probably first dating, and she made sure that Chip and Dale came over there and kind of harassed me. It was kind of funny.
Yeah.
So that's how I remember that Chip and Dale was there. But then in 2009, I think they don't do that anymore, and so it's just regular dining. So there now. So
Yeah, which is a little disappointing. I feel like it was a really great character dining experience. The food was fantastic. I know the
awesome.
capacity for the actual restaurant is not much. It's a smaller restaurant. The restrooms, I remember, are incredibly small. You could barely squeeze. I think there's like two stalls in there, and you gotta, if you're standing there washing your hands, the person whacks you at the door when they open them. It's just like really, really tiny. And they're upstairs, which was
Yes.
interesting. So I think if you were in a wheelchair, it was a difficult restaurant to navigate because there were a lot of steps. It wasn't super disability friendly. And then you'd have to
No.
go outside and use the restrooms in Liberty Square elsewhere because you couldn't get upstairs to those tiny, tiny bathrooms. So that was something that they still have it in the same building. Nothing has changed there. But now they offer the same meal, basically, next door at the Diamond Horseshoe, which I know Regan had made a reservation. This was years ago now at Liberty Tree Tavern. And he went and they said, okay, your table's ready. And they walked them next door to the Diamond Horseshoe. And he's like, wait, what is this? Why are we going over here? And they're like, oh, now we seat people in here too. And he was so disappointed. So I think now they're separate for reservations. I'm not 100% sure, but it's the same price, the same meal, but you're not sitting in Liberty Tree Tavern. You're sitting in the Diamond Horseshoe. And
Right.
back in the day, the Diamond Horseshoe used to have more of like a barbecue-y theme. And did they used to have a show there, Dad, that you would like sit and watch a show?
Yes, I've never seen the show. I know Disneyland had one for the longest time. There was a guy that was there for years and had kind of a Wild West show, a little bit like Hoop-Dee-Doo Review, kind
Yeah.
of, but not maybe
Okay.
that elaborate, but something like that for years. I'm not sure when that ended, but it seemed to be a restaurant for a long time. The Diamond Horseshoe, that there wasn't much of anything going on in there. You could see where the stage was and some of the
Hmm.
balcony areas up there. But yeah, I never have seen a show there. I wish they'd bring some of that stuff back because I think it would be very popular. I
Yeah.
wouldn't mind Liberty Tree Tavern food at that restaurant if they had a little show going on or something just to make it worth it. Because Liberty Tree is
Yeah.
pretty. The Liberty Tree restaurant is pretty cool.
Yeah, it is pretty cool. And there's a lot of little nods to different things in Liberty Tree as well, like hidden
Yeah.
things with different names and unique decorations, things that they use as decor in the restaurant that are really cool. So I feel like you go then over to the Diamond Horseshoe and you're like, what? There's just this big open kind of banquety area. And yeah, so yeah. But that it, I do remember, I thought I remembered, I'd have to look it back up that they had like Jesse from Toy Story over there at some point in like Bullseye. So for some reason that like sticks in my head.
Yeah, that
Or
would have
maybe
made
it was just
sense. Yeah, that would have made sense there. I think they did at one time. Um, yeah, of course, that would have been quite a long time ago now, probably what, about 20 years ago now,
yeah,
now that
because
I
I
think
think
about it, when it's
it went from
popular.
like sit down to um then to like a quick service and then again to
Right.
sit down. So and I feel like maybe
Okay.
somewhere in there was like a character meet and greet with them. I don't know why I think that, but now it is table service, same food as Liberty Tree, which for those of you who are not familiar, Liberty Tree's all you can eat menu is basically turkey, mashed potatoes. It's like a Thanksgiving meal, green beans, they have cornbread, I think.
Yeah.
They have some kind of like apple pie dessert. And there is another type of meat that they serve. I can't remember if it's, I
I
don't
think it's
know.
like a roast beef or something
Roast
like
beef.
that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
roast
we've
beef.
eaten there many times at the Halloween party. We would go early and eat there. Another thing about the Liberty Tree, which I thought was pretty cool, there's 6 dining rooms, and they're all like the George Washington room, the Ben Franklin room, Betsy Ross room, Thomas
Yes.
Jefferson, and the John Paul Jones room. So those are the 6 dining rooms, and everything in there is pretty. I don't know. I won't say it's authentic, but it's period correct when you walk in there. I always have loved it. I know our family, when your kids were small, we went there all the time. And Regan's always like, even to this day, is like, I love going to the Liberty Tree Tavern. I mean, the food is endless, and you got to go there though when you're really hungry. Don't go there just for a quick bite to eat because they bring the food, and it's not inexpensive, to
Right.
say the least. But you got to go there real hungry, maybe toward dinner time, and maybe even pass on lunch. So because when you get there, there's just a lot of food. It's really good, but there's a lot of food.
Yeah, I think that's what I remember kind of eating breakfast and then doing it like mid-afternoon and then having,
Right.
snacks or dessert instead of like a full another meal. And that was a really good way to do it because you saved room. But that's what made the lunch menu so nice. I remember going there for lunch a few times and
Yeah.
it was just like the one plate of the amazing Thanksgiving food, but it wasn't all you can eat, but then it was like you got the best of both worlds. It wasn't as expensive. I mean, you didn't get the character dining part of it, but you get, a really good meal of the food that you could have obviously endless later. But if you're not
Right.
in the place or in the money part to do that, you could still have the good food. So I wish that they would have kept that. I know it makes more sense because they fill it, and that place is almost always, reservations are way, way, way out, even
Right.
now without the character dining. So I do wish they'd bring the character dining back. That was one thing that was really, really cool about it. I'm not sure why they got rid of it. Could you figure out any reason why, or did they say why they got rid of it that you recall?
When they start getting rid of things like character dining, they probably don't need that to pack the place because they
Yeah.
don't. And it's an extra cost, right? Disney's always looking, unfortunately, ways to cut costs,
Yeah.
and keep bringing your admission fee up and all the other things. We don't need to go there because most people that have attended Disney the
Yeah.
last 10 years probably know what we're talking about. But yeah, I'm sure it was a cost cutting thing, and they didn't need that as a driver to bring people in because it's always been very well attended for years. So it's been there since the beginning, since 1971. So
Oh, it was Liberty Tree was there opening
oh
day?
sure, yeah,
Oh,
and it
I didn't
hasn't
know
changed
that.
much in all those years. Yeah, that's an original restaurant.
Wow, cool. I didn't look that up. Very cool. And then we also have Columbia Harbor House, which I know this is
Yeah,
one of Doreen's favorite restaurants. Is that right?
yeah, she loves it. Yeah, they had the fish there and the clam chowder, if I remember
It's like
right. And
northeastern food, like yeah,
yeah,
lobster
yeah,
rolls, shrimp platter, fish, yeah, clam
we ate there in
chowder.
January. Yeah, about a year ago we ate there. We took Michaela and her friend, my granddaughter and her friend there for a Disney day, and we ate there. And I kid you not, I was surprised that I got chicken strips. Big surprise, right? Chicken strips, French fries, and a Coke. Those are the best chicken strips I think I've ever had in my life. It was really good. It was
That's
like
what
10.99.
everyone says. It's reasonably priced and really good food. That's everything I
Yeah.
hear from everyone that eats there.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. For a quick service, and I don't know if you mentioned this in your notes, but go upstairs, right? Go upstairs
Yeah,
to eat.
I've heard that. I don't know that I've ever eaten here. All I remember about
Oh,
this restaurant was that when we went to the Christmas party, I believe there was some special annual pass holder thing, or maybe it was just where you went and got hot cocoa. We got to go
yes.
upstairs.
Yes.
Is that
Hot
right?
cocoa in a right, hot watery cocoa and a cookie. That was probably not all that great, but yes, that was a Christmas party. The only one I ever attended. I never went back after that because it never was anywhere near the Halloween party. But yes, that's where we went exactly. And I think Keys to the Kingdom tour that you and I did,
We ate there maybe
we
for that.
we ate there upstairs. They had a
Okay.
right, that was part of the whatever you could pick, your chicken strips and fries or whatever you
Yeah.
wanted. And they had it ready for you when we went up there for like halfway through the tour, which I thought was pretty
Okay.
cool.
Okay, that's what I was like. Maybe we did eat there one time, but no, Maddie and I never have, which we should because he really loves fish. And so I think that he would love it there. But as a person, as you know, with a fish allergy, it's like, well, I can get chicken fingers somewhere else. But I feel like it is, like people say, it's a really great quick service place, reasonably priced considering for what you can get there. And if you like Northeastern, like lobster roll type thing, it's obviously a unique place to get that because they don't offer that very many places in Disney.
Yes.
And then another place that we used to frequent a lot, especially during Halloween parties and things, was the Sleepy Hollow. And I was sad to see, I haven't been there in a long time, they no longer have root beer floats there. That is not a thing there
No,
anymore.
no,
So
really?
that used to be the place to go get a Coke float or root beer float, whatever. They'd let you pick your beverage of choice, put ice cream in it, and that's what they served there. They also had coffee because I do remember Doreen getting coffee there when we'd get our root beer floats. And it didn't matter if it was freezing cold, we'd always drink, well, freezing cold for Florida, like 50 degrees. We'd always drink a root beer float. But now the menu is basically just like funnel cakes and waffles with different
Oh,
spreads.
wow.
So
Okay.
it's like a very fancy waffle thing. So they have like this fancy waffle with whatever fancy spread. They have corn dogs there and they still have coffee. But I was sad to see that they no longer had the root beer floats at Sleepy Hollow.
Yeah, that was a staple there for probably, I know for years, because you always got one there.
Yeah.
And other people that we went with, that's where we always went for the root beer floats. And it normally got served pretty quick too. I think you ordered at one window, then you slipped down to the
Yep.
next window, they had it ready for you, right? One thing I didn't like about that, even though it had a great view of the castle, right? You could sit there and look at the castle and
Yes.
the moat there and everything they have, or the river. I don't know if it's really called a moat, but there was not very much seating. A couple of picnic tables there. There wasn't any place to sit. It got busy, so you had to
Yeah.
kind of carry it somewhere and find some place else to sit. I think that's one thing that's kind of lacking at the Magic Kingdom is, just some places to sit down,
Seating.
maybe in the shade to eat somewhere. Yeah, it's a little lacking and over across the whole park, as far as I'm concerned. But
Yeah, I agree because I feel like Hollywood Studios has much, like pretty much anywhere you get something besides a popcorn stand, there's seats outside and
yeah,
plenty of seats, it seems to
yes,
me. But I
they
do
learned their
hear
lesson.
a lot of people complain about that at Epcot because of like the Food and Wine Festival. They'll pick up wherever at whatever kiosk in the country and then they'll go eat on like a trash can because there's not enough
Yes, we've
seating.
done that.
So I do
Oh,
hear that
lovely.
about Epcot a lot too.
Yeah.
And then there's also the Liberty Square Market, which is just like a little stop and grab some fruit. There's turkey legs, there's Mickey pretzels, there's slushies. But this, why I want to talk about it, is that's a great place for the parade. So you're right there where you can sneak out when you're done back to Fantasyland or whatever. But it's a great kind of halfway point before they turn on to Main Street, and that's where the crowd gets really, really bad. But at Halloween, this is almost always where we sit. There are benches right outside of like across the street from Ye Olde Christmas Shop, and you can kind of sit on the edging near Liberty Square. There's rockers there outside of Liberty Tree Tavern, and that's a great place to watch the fireworks. So that is, or the fireworks, I'm sorry, the parade. That's definitely a recommendation if you're there for Halloween. Go to the late parade. That's always my recommendation. And go sit somewhere in Frontierland right outside there. But we've sat there for daytime parades as well and gotten a slushie or a pretzel from the cart behind us and then sit there and watch the parade. And it's a good place to pull up your stroller if you've got one or stand if you're, just there without kids. That's one of my favorite places to sit and watch the parade. And then there was something else you wanted to share too about Hall of Presidents, Dad, you said.
Oh, before I get to that, we have to hit one other store,
Oh,
Memento Mori,
oh yes, yes, yes,
the
yes.
Haunted Mansion store.
That's
And
right.
one thing I just wanted to say about that, when we used to come out of the Haunted Mansion, there was a kiosk. Do you remember that they were
Yes.
selling Haunted Mansion shirts or hat, whatever? Not a lot of stuff. It's just a little cart, little
Yep.
kiosk. And I always kept saying to you guys, why don't they open up a Haunted Mansion store? People would love that. It has such a following. Well, 2014, here they
Yep.
go. It used to be I don't know, it used to be, I remember them selling like Smucker's jelly and
Fancy.
jams in there. Wasn't it
Yeah.
some
And I
kind
feel
of,
like they had like fancy china or something maybe.
yeah,
Like it was
yeah,
like stuff
yeah,
you would
yeah.
never buy.
I forget the name of the store, but that's what it was forever. And then yeah, we always walked in there like almost to cut through to get over to the Haunted
Yeah.
Mansion, right? When it was crowded. But yeah, 2014, Memento Mori opened, and back in the day when we were going more, I spent a lot of time checking out everything there. They just have a lot of different Haunted Mansion things. I won't get into all the details of it, but I'm glad they did that. And another thing I wish they would have did, and they almost pulled it off, and then they pulled the plug on it, was a Haunted Mansion sit-down restaurant.
Yeah.
I always thought that would be a win, and they had it on the drawing board. And for some reason, recently it just got pulled off. They're not going to do it. I don't know why. I think it would be a big hit, but
Yes, it
just
would
my
be a
thought.
big hit. Yeah, that's what I think Regan and I talked about that in one of our, and maybe in our dining episode of like a wish we had it was like
Yes.
type of Haunted Mansion restaurant. It would be really cool.
One
Um,
other thing, yeah, one other thing, real quick. I'm just going to backtrack to the Hall of Presidents that I failed to mention. That's really, I had no idea. There are 9 presidents that have been recycled. In other words, the animatronics are getting tired or whatever, and
mhm.
they replace them with new animatronics. But they've taken those presidents and now they're in Spaceship Earth.
Oh, really? I did not know this.
The mandolin player, a scholar, a Turkish scholar, a monk, a centurion, a Roman senator, an Egyptian priest, and one of the people that's doing the printer. I guess the Gutenberg press or whatever they're showing there. I guess that's
Yeah,
what it's called. But yeah, those are basically recycled Hall of
presidents.
Presidents. president.
And is that
I just
because
thought
in
that,
Spaceship Earth they don't move, so they just like stand there, so they're just like, or
yeah,
did
there's
they
some of
fix
them,
them
yeah,
up?
and some of them may move a little bit, but maybe these are just static things. But I know the mandolin player. I remember seeing him and out there, and they and online they do spell out who's who, and that I don't know if you could really pick that out in their face. I don't know, maybe you could, but I just thought it
Yeah.
was funny that they just recycle them and why throw them out, right? They might as well use them somewhere, and that's where they put them. So just so you know.
Yeah. Yeah, which we talked about that a little bit with the oh my goodness, what is the ride when we did our Parks of the Past Magic Kingdom, the show that used to be where the 3D show is PhilharMagic before Lion King, there was the Mickey Mouse Review and they took
Yes.
a bunch of those animatronics and reused them. They took them to over to Asia first in one of their
Tokyo
parks for a
Disney,
long time. And then
right?
they brought them over, like the Three Caballeros. Those are in that ride. And then some of them were like Splash Mountain characters before Splash Mountain was a thing. And Snow
Right.
White, like they reused some of those in the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. So a lot of
Right.
reusing of animatronics, which is really cool and like neat to think about. That they
Sure. Yeah.
don't, it doesn't go to waste. It doesn't just go in a dumpster somewhere. They actually recycle and reuse them, which is cool.
Yeah. Expensive.
So,
Yeah. Sure.
yes, very expensive. So, for our old versus new, we are going to do basically what do you think is better financially, and then also, like, in your opinion, just for fun, the Liberty Tree Tavern as it was or as it is today? What do you think makes the most sense for Disney, and what do you think you would prefer? I already know the answer, but
Well, for Disney, of course, if they change it all, it's just a kind of a one-stop shop for the same thing for lunch and dinner. So we know that's it. I think they're chasing the bucks there, obviously, but I would
yeah.
like to see the way it was. I even would like to see the characters come back, especially for you have younger kids, right? What are they,
Yes.
2 and 5? And they
Yeah.
would probably really enjoy seeing Minnie and Chippendale and everything and their colonial attire. Um, Bring that back, and we always, or not always, many times, we would just go do the lunch thing. I think by if you as long as you got in there by 2 o'clock, the meal was like half the price. And you're right, you didn't get all you can eat, but how many people can get? How many people can eat all you can eat? You eat one
Right.
serving, maybe a little bit of two servings, you're pretty much done. Even if you're a big eater, 'cause that's just a lot of food. It's real heavy. So I would like to see it as the way it was before they went to the lunch and dinner menu being the same. Going back to
Yeah.
the more inexpensive lunch menu and bring back the characters. I would like to see that.
Yeah, me too. And I agree. I think the characters were really cool. I think having the option of the lunch menu was great. And they had some different things because Doreen would order like fish or something there, right? Would she get like salmon or something during the lunch menu?
Yeah, yes.
Or
She's
some kind
there's
of
one.
cod or
I think it was a salmon dish. She really liked it, and then I think they eventually just kind of that went away, and then not long after that, they started going back to this again, the dinner menu kind of at lunch also.
at
So
lunchtime. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and that's a similar restaurant that we love that you got to go with us to with the kids is Garden Grill, and that has, similar characters, similar enough food. It's not the same, but
Oh
it's
yeah,
really,
very similar.
really good. But it was like you pay all this money to eat all you can eat. We did it for like a late lunch, and it really was like impossible to eat so much food. And then, I mean, if you can do it, then you're going to feel horrible afterwards. So, and they're walking around the park in the hot sun. So it is, I wish that they would do more fixed menu stuff like for lunch and then, do the all you can eat for dinner or vice versa, something like that. But I know it is obviously a money thing for them for sure. But I do miss the old Liberty Tree Tavern back how it was. And I wish they'd sell the mugs, all the things that they have gotten rid of now. I don't think they sell the mugs anymore, I believe.
Yeah, I don't know, but I haven't asked lately, but they might not have those anymore. They might have some plastic stuff. It's not so much fun.
Yeah, yeah,
Plastic,
not
plastic
quite the
mug,
same appeal. And
right?
then our trivia for today is a haunted mansion question. And I don't know the answer to this. You might know it right away, but it says in the conservatory, you see a coffin with two dead hands trying to push it open, and above him is a raven. Name the other place you see this raven. Is it on the caretaker's shoulders, on top of the first gravestone in the graveyard, in the ballroom, or in the seance room? I want to say the gravestone in the graveyard, but then I also am like, is he in the sands room? I'm like trying to remember.
That's a great question. I keep thinking the graveyard too. I don't know if they would want to have that. have the Raven in the seance room because you're trying to listen to what
Madame
Madame Leota
Leota.
is saying, right? She's saying this whole spiel, and with the Raven, crowing or whatever, there would be a good. I'm going to say the graveyard.
The graveyard. Okay, let's see. Sometimes these quizzes take 10 years for me to find the answer. It's the seance room. It is.
We should,
So
yeah.
it's,
Why don't we know that, right?
yeah, but then I was like, that's what I was like. I feel like but I don't remember it cawing. Maybe it just sits there. But
Maybe.
I remember it above the hands, but I, for some reason, thought it was a graveyard. Okay, but it is the seance room. Interesting. All right, we both learned something new
I know my
today.
favorite attraction. I thought I knew a lot about that, but I didn't know that one. So
There's
that's a
so
good
much
question.
in that attraction to pay
So much,
attention to that it's
so much.
hard. It's so easy to miss things. I mean, you could ride that like we have 100 times and still be like, oh yeah, there's that. Or and like I said about the portraits, like things moving that you just
Right.
don't realize. That's for sure.
Oh,
Well,
sure.
thank you guys for listening to our Liberty Square review. Oh, we didn't rank our attractions. Sorry, before we
Oh,
go, let's rank our attractions. So there's obviously only the three, the Hall of Presidents, the Riverboat, and the Haunted Mansion. Obviously, Haunted Mansion for me would be number one. And then I think for me, Riverboat would be second, followed by Hall of Presidents. But how would you rank them, Dad?
of course, Haunted Mansion number one. I would have to go with the Hall of Presidents. I'm just impressed by, even though the beginning's kind of like a junior high film strip in history class, watching
Yeah.
that whole, it's good. It's our history, which is great. But when the presidents come out, and it to me, it's so impressive. Their the animatronics are just amazing, and the way they've been sculpted by Blaine Gibson and the clothes, like you said, all the detail. As I get older, I think I'm just really impressed with that. Maybe not so much as a kid, but as an adult, I think, wow, there's a lot of effort that went into putting that attraction together, and it's the history of our country, which is really cool. So, and then the riverboat would have to be last, and if I don't ride that again, I guess I'm good.
Yeah, which again, we don't know exactly when it's going to close, but if you're really attached to the riverboat, you better go soon because it will be going here probably by the end of the year. It will be gone,
Yes,
is my
yes.
guess, because they'll be starting on the Cars Land. All right, again, well, thank you guys for listening. We really appreciate it. And thanks again to Dad for coming back on the show. And we will talk to you guys next time.
Okay, see you later.
Hey, thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to give us a follow on Instagram at Soarin Around WDW Pod, where we share fun reels, throwback photos, and dive into our old versus new debates. If you're listening on YouTube, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment. And for our Spotify listeners, a follow and a 5-star review would mean the world. Thanks again for joining us. See you next time.